Well, let's have this conversation this morning about national orientation. And that's a much talked about topic as well in the wake of the situation that happened in Delta. The President Tinubu said, look, no one should dishonor any emblem of state, in which case he was talking about the military. Yesterday we had a conversation with the retired Major General Agundu, who was saying part of the reasons for that occurrence in Delta State couldn't be anything short of inadequate community engagement, because two communities were warring and the military was invited to go mediate, and then all of that happened. So it begs the question of national orientation, particularly at a time when the Minister for National Orientation has also been talking about a national values charter. Joining us this morning, as you've seen earlier, is Mr. Nat'l, very well known as Alibaba. He's a media entrepreneur, he's a comedian, and he's also a public commentator. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
How your take on that opinion by retired Major General Agundu that part of the reason for the occurrence in Delta State was inadequate community engagement?
You see, the essence and importance of the community engagement cannot be overemphasized. You see a lot of the oil companies always have that desk in their companies where they have somebody who is in charge of community relations. It's important. But above all, it is the neglect of it that then causes the consequences we now see. The engagement, which is why these days you then hear the people in the force, police force, trying to beg people to relate with them better. When the relationship is sour or is suspect, trust then becomes an issue. When trust becomes an issue, you have an information, you can't go to pass it on to the police.
The person you don't trust.
Exactly. Because most times, people who have tried to pass this message to, pass some information to the police, end up being suspects. Or being asked, how did you get this information? He said, I heard it from her. And then when you then try to report them, some of them even then endanger the person that brought the information to them. So what happens is there's an absence of trust, and that trust then relates to how people then communicate with the police or the force. I am sure that one person in that village would have known about these things that these people have done. And as soon as those people came to find out what happened to these other three, they would have even gotten the information. But you see, that information is not there. Patriotism is on the lowest right now across the country. Patriotism is at the lowest. People do not even believe government policies, do not believe government plans for them, do not think that anytime government says they will do this, they will do it. Because every time you hear of something government tries to do, something happens again that makes us believe, or makes the people believe, I don't think government is even sincere. So those are the issues.
Well, you know, when we were growing up, occasionally we had the Lagos representative of the National Population Census in the studio once, when the government was talking about the census and aspiring that, okay, at a particular time it was going to take off. So we had, and she's, of course, now with the Lagos State government, we had this conversation. I was talking about how people needed to be mobilized. And we were talking about a song that was done by a Fuji musician back in time. It's a common parlance. It was talking about census, how someone will come to them and will be asking them, come and count us and all of those things. So music was used at the time. And I also remember I think it was, I'm not sure whether it was during the military era, before or after.
Military
no, I'm talking about the Andrew saga.
Okay. So Andrew, not check out.
Yes, I think that was about this during the Second Republic, or about the time it was going out.
It was 1993, 1994. It was about that time. Okay, so it was during Babangida. MAMSA, Mobilization?
No. I'm talking about NTA. You know, it was just NTA at the time.
Sure.
Enebele Elebua led that cast of Andrew Nochekat. It was in the 80s, I remember, because it was about the same time Deno Mariokai released an album called Nigeria Go Survive. So we have had cases where the entertainment industry, for instance, was used as a mass mobilization instrument. Tell us what happened at that time, because I'm pretty sure you have some kind of background. And why are we missing out on that opportunity now?
Our national consciousness at that time was very high. The belief in a country as we had it was very strong. Nationalism was high. It's at the time that social studies were being taught. It's at the time history was being taught. It's at the time we're very proud of the people who came before us. It's at the time civics was a subject in school. It was a time when the national anthem is sung. Everyone stands up. There's no movement around. These days, national anthem is being played. People are walking up and down. As MC of certain events, I have to then say, please stand for the national anthem. Remain standing. Sometimes you find photographers and all of those going up and down, but you must remain standing for the national anthem. The respect for the flag, the respect for country are all the things that orientation is needed for. You need that awareness to be driven to the minds and driven into the minds of people so that it is in front of mind and front of consciousness of the people every time to know that first, country first. But you see, when you take that out, it then takes them back to their regions. So it becomes region first. You need to begin to push the awareness to the point where people believe when you recognize the Nigeria first mentality in the minds of the people, you begin to have a better country. So all the time you have the Andrew Nochekat, it was about trying to say, let's come together and save Nigeria. There were several songs then at the time. So the use of the creative industry, government and politicians only recognize it when it's time for elections.
But that's not the way it was before.
No, it wasn't. But you see, so for them, they use it as a tool, achieve the purpose of winning an election and forget about it. You need to continue to drop. You have a national orientation agency. Your national orientation agency is to create awareness, is to build public trust, is to continue to inform the people, get feedback from the society and from citizenry back to the government. They're not doing any of those. Those are the things that are missing right now. Those are the things that MAMSA, with Jerry Ghana at the time, were doing. They were creating awareness for people. They were making people know about government policies, breaking it down in different languages. Not everybody is educated. Sometimes pidgin English is the best way to even pass messages to nearly about 70-80% of the population, because of the 200 and something people that we are, 200 and something million people that we are in this country, about 80% of that number can speak pidgin English. Other institutions across the world recognize it. The BBC has a pidgin service because they know the value of communicating with people and getting feedback as well.
And you know what's interesting in all of these things that you've said is the engagement ambit, the communication part of it.
Sure.
And we all know that by nature, government communication is formal. Is, as we would say in English, it's straight-jacketed. It has to be in a particular way, in a particular format at all times. Now, how do we get around the situation where we use musicians to do these jobs? We use comedians to talk about God and country, because there are quite a number of comedians who Nigeria is the butt of their jokes. How do we reverse that trend? What informs that?
Okay, so the thing is that once you build national interest, you build patriotism, and you build nationalism, you let people know that there's something to live for, there's something to fight for. I'll give you an example of how disorientating some things are. You're telling people to buy Nigeria. You're telling people to think Nigeria. And you go ahead and buy so many cars from another country when your car manufacturers are here and are looking for business. One, right? You have businesses that are here. There is a Zynox, there's a telecoms companies that are based here. You don't give them business. You take the hard-earned money that you are looking for, dollars that you don't have, and give to a foreign country. Look at what the airline is doing right now. When a particular airline, I'm mentioning them, when Air Peace dropped their prices and are going to begin to fly into, some other countries decided to cut their prices as well. So what are we saying? Let's be patriotic. And to drive the patriotism, government itself needs to be in the forefront of showing example. Once you have an exemplary government that is doing things showing that, yes, we are considering the people, we are nationalistic in policies and everything that we do, people will follow you.
Okay. Well, I know that my colleagues also have questions for you. So, Nat'l, please go ahead.
Alibaba, it's good to see you and Happy New Year to you. There is this, the pledge. Let's start from there. I just scribbled it down here. You've said a couple of things. You've talked about the use of the creative industry. Most times the politicians only remember the creative industry when they are approaching the election season. But let's get to what we recite in primary school. I don't even know if they recite it these days. We all recite it. And now when we go for events, what we hear is the second stanza of the national anthem. They play the national anthem, just the tune, and we all stand up, and then we now recite the second stanza as a prayer. But the national pledge, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. You said something about national orientation, that the government needs to be at the forefront of it. So the question I want to ask, do you think the government recites a different pledge from what the Nigerian citizens recite?
Obviously, yes. We're not mincing words. Obviously, because when you think about it, when the government says this should be done, and then you then see that they are not doing the same, you tell us to tighten our belts, right? And you are putting on weight. So what we need to do is the government needs to put everybody on the same page. When you say this is going to be done, you show by examples that this will be done. If you say don't drive against one way, the government on its own side should ensure that any of its people that drives any government vehicle on one way should be punished as well. It shouldn't be that it takes a governor to stop, like during the Fashola time, to stop a military officer from using a route that has been designated for public transport and calling him to order. We should not be seeing such embarrassments. Overseas, the respect we give to military people, you want to board a flight, they tell you they have to board their armed forces personnel first before they board any other person. Here, people will tell you why. But you see, once you begin to create a better consciousness and awareness for the values of country, we will all respect it. But it has to come from the government. You can't tell us to buy Nigeria, and you're not. So what I'm trying to say is that government needs to show better examples for us to obey.
Okay, but when you say government needs to show better example, granted, then where is the role of the citizen? So if the government is not showing the right example, does that give the citizens room to step out of line?
Okay, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you see, they now begin to see that it looks like this government is not for us. You don't want that to happen. For instance, when it's time for elections, people feel like, okay, government has said there's going to be elections. They come out to vote. And then the government machinery that is supposed to make sure that the vote is properly counted and accounted for, is wavering. And then the people don't have trust. So when you have trust issues, it's hard for you to convince people to begin to believe in any policy and anything that you do. Which is why at the time, the military had that big issue. So because it was military that created it. When they had that big issue of trying to win over the citizenry, they had to start the mass mobilization, create awareness, do adverts. A lot of the adverts, most of these, like government wanted to start, government wanted at the time to reduce our population because the economy said that we are at a verge of increased population, and the population was going to be overpopulation. And so we are verge of overpopulation, and there's need for awareness to be created. So what happened? They got Sonny Ade and Onyeka Owenu to do the song of having babies, not be joko. You know?
Wait for me.
Wait for me. That you go feed them, you go clothe them, you go something like that. If you never ready to carry the load, why put them for another person? Which is what is happening now. You actually have somebody who has a job, earns 1 million naira, has 2 kids. You have somebody who earns 60,000 naira, has 8 kids. And then after, you now want to put it on but the government has to step in and make a policy. But apart from that, they too must respect that policy that they've made. Government cannot put something out and say, oh, this is a policy, only those people should deal with it, and we can't deal with it. No. So what I was saying is, whatever government policy is out there must be one that the people must respect. But for the people to respect it, government must be the forefront of pushing it as well.
You know, seeing you right now, the first thing I want to say is, Brassier, it's so good to see you.
Mark, it's been a while. It's been a while.
And you always say, you know, Shebi, I'm a comedian. What do I do? If only people will listen, you know. I want to ask you something, because I've just written a bit of your biography, and, you know, the fact that you wanted to read law before you decided to veer off into comedy and, you know, doing what you did in university. I do not know if you've gone back to read law, if it's still a desire of yours. But as somebody who, and I'm making this, you can tell me about your background and maybe interest in law, whether it's something you've still done. But based on the fact that I do not know that you're a lawyer or that you have read law, I want to ask you, I'm assuming that you are an everyday Nigerian just like myself. When you hear these conversations about how our constitution has a bearing on where we currently are at, I don't know what your thoughts are to it. Do you think that there's too much emphasis on our constitution being the cause or being the bane of where we currently are?
First of all, it is that our constitution is the biggest problem we have right now. It's an anomaly. It's not actually a constitution. It's something that some people got together, drafted, got some constitutional lawyers and say, put this together, knock it together, and let's have it. Because the constitution doesn't speak to the growth and national development of our country. I'll explain. There was a guest you had before now who spoke about the creation of states. Some states were created just to appease some military officers. Oh, this guy is a senior military officer, he comes from this area, and we can't give him a state now. Let's just create a state and take care of those people. Or there is also the issue that, okay, we want to create 4 states in the north. Let's just balance it. Let's split some in the south so that everything, it looks like it wasn't like deliberate. Because some of the states that were created needed to be local government. Up till now, you have states that if they do not get federal allocation for 3 months, there'll be problem in the state. Meanwhile, those same states have enough natural resources. Because all of this really, let me now speak like someone who went to school. All of the problems that we have right now was when the federal government, the federal military government, decided that all regions should bring their monies to federal government. Put it in the national purse and we'll give you what you need. Because at the time that Western region had its own money, Cocoa House and all those things were being built. At the time the Eastern region had its own money, a lot of things were also being built. But you see, when these military men took over, and found out that, okay, the reason Ojukwu had so much power, the reason Awolowo had so much power is because they had this kind of money in their hands. So going forward, after the Abure Accord and all of those has failed, let's make sure that the money comes to us and we determine who gets whatever. Derivation Fund is just also trying to just appease those abnormalities. Because the truth is, if you want your country to grow, let each state generate its own revenue. The federal government can assist them if they want to. But the funds and the revenue that comes from certain states should not be shared to every other person. If you're thinking like that, then I was talking with someone the other day and he was saying, this is just to let you know that the national orientation needs to do a lot more. He was saying that Abuja belongs to the northern people. And the guy said, oil belongs to the south. How many Hausa men have been in charge of national NNPC? So it is not about that. One is national, which is the reason some of them fear about the regional police. So what I'm trying to say is that we have a country where the states are not even capable of taking care of themselves because of how warped the constitution is. And our legal minds should sit down and actually draft a constitution that pays everyone so that each region can actually grow to their what is it called? New York is not depending on the state of Texas. Texas is not dependent on the state of so, but they pay something to the federal body. That's what we need for proper national consciousness.
I'm just wondering whether you see a bearing between that and our national orientation. Do you see how that has affected our behavior, our, I'm looking for our attitude towards patriotism, etc. over the years?
So our national orientation, and as the agency was set up for, was to consistently raise awareness, is to provide timely and credible feedback, is to positively change attitudes, values, and behaviors, and to accurately and adequately inform the citizenry, is to sufficiently mobilize citizens to act in ways and promote peace and harmony, and for national development. But let me tell you, before the elections, there was talk about census. What did the National Orientation Agency do to push the awareness? No, none. None. You had issues of exchange rates going to be controlled by CBN and also. What did you see on TV? That was a public service announcement from the National Orientation Agency. None. What we should do is our National Orientation Agency should have a studio, have copywriters, creative minds. These people that are in the creative industry, have them at your beck and call, ready to push out awareness, to drive policies, create information, create awareness, so that people then understand it. Before people begin to fire back at you and say, why is this, that, why is that? You would have informed them before the thing even happens. What happens is that it's just like a lot of people were just shocked at the time that Mr. President said, oh, subsidy has been removed. So certain things like that, before it is done, you create an awareness and tell them the value propositions and the benefits of this policy before it then hits the market.
But there's something Malkwe asked you, was it Malkwe or Nat'l that asked you?
Yeah.
The role of the citizen. Does that empower the citizen? The fact that government is not doing the needful, does that mean that the citizen should just, go on without? Because I'm asking that because, as I said earlier, some musicians, go to town and say all kinds of things. In the examples of musicians calling Nigeria by whatever name, and some of your colleagues in the comedy industry who will go out and say, Nigeria, let Nigeria not happen to you, and on and on like that. We depict these things even in drama. Okay. So that's the question that I would like you to, how can we as a people take the lead? Because it is the Nigerian that is going to become a government official.
But you see, when the Nigerians start complaining about certain things, that's a feedback that the National Orientation Agency is supposed to take back to government to say, these people are feeling this pinch here and there. But you see, most times when people complain, they feel like you are against the government. Right? So the people truly must serve their own obligations. They must perform their own obligations to government and live right. You say the people should not drive against one way, they should always obey the traffic, but there's this huge pothole that has blocked a certain part of the road, and they can't take that part again. And then they try to use the other side that is good. You said, no, they must stay on this other part. You see, so government must also come and meet them.
In the meantime,
exactly.
In the meantime, what do people do? By the way, just before you answer that one, and I know that we're out of time, much of these we have been talking about the national orientation. Is there no role for the states?
Okay, so what happens was that the states don't have orientation agencies, but their ministries of information and communication, most of those strategy and information, always try to push the policies that pay government most. Feedback channels are always considered as opposition. If they're getting information from the opposition. So there's need for awareness to be created for people to understand that this government, because once an election is over, there's no more this party, that party. Everybody now has to work with the government that's in power.
So many other issues to raise with you, Alibaba, because, I mean, I would have loved for us to explore conversations around mobilizing young people, because if that had been in place, what happened in the Delta communities probably wouldn't have happened. But for now, we have to thank
because they didn't know the consequences too. You have to know the consequences of something you are doing that is wrong.
So they weren't fully engaged.
They were not fully, exactly.
Absolutely. Atunota Pobebe, also known as Alibaba, thank you so much for your time this morning. He's a media entrepreneur, comedian, and public commentator. Well, that's the conversation. Nat'l and Makwe, I beg your pardon. Yes, Nat'l Makwe. What's new?
Well, what's new is that we have to go, and the truth is that we all have a role to play in moving our nation forward. We need to love this nation and just be our best at that area where we find ourselves in our own little corner. Do your best, do your thing, and let's hold up Nigeria. I'm Nat'l. Thank you for watching.
Well, thank you for watching today. This is also continue to salute the service of our servicemen and women. Thank you, Amaokwe Yusuf.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your service, Nigerian Army. And what's new? It's the news at 11. We'll be right here.